You're disgusting. I like that in a person. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you to review a movie that I hold in relatively high regard. It came out in 1993. I think it's basically 25 years ago at this point. A movie that's really pretty good, I think, by the name of Needful Things. And this is the original VHS from 1994. I don't think I ever, I got this. I don't think I ever got it on Laserdisc. I have subsequently got the DVD of it. But I thought it'd be kind of cool to show you the original, what the original VHS looked like. I thought this cover was really pretty cool, and it might have been the kind of the poster art in theater. I can't remember, but I think I've always loved the colors of the cover, and thought it was pretty good. Here's the back of it. Got Leland Garnt smiling in the flames. But Needful Things actually had a really, really good trailer, and I remember seeing the trailer back in the day, probably on some other VHS tape, but I never, being, when you're a teenager, you don't necessarily, you can't go necessarily see a movie, an R-rated movie, unless one of your parents wants to do it, so you don't always get to see everything being a teenager that you'd want, unlike being an adult. Of course, I probably go to the theater even less as an adult, because there's nothing in the theater I want to see anymore, barely. But I didn't end up seeing this in the theater. I don't think it would have been really cool to have seen it in the theater. But I wouldn't I wouldn't see it until it came out on video, which is the tape was actually it's got the year of '94 on it, so it probably didn't come out on VHS till '94. But I remember, we rented it, and I was just like, oh wow! And ever since I've seen it, I've absolutely thought that this was a really, really, really good movie. And I actually revisited the DVD I have of it recently. And this is really, really good movie, and as I've said in so many reviews past of movies that were a Stephen King book turned into a movie, it should be said that I'm not a Stephen King fan by any stretch of the imagination, by any means whatsoever. But this is, apparently it says on the back of the VHS that, this was a #1 bestseller or whatever, but I will say that, not having read the book, the premise of this movie, or the story, which obviously I would imagine is relatively close to the book, is a really, really great idea, and if I may say so, probably a lot of truth. They put a lot of truth in movies, and there's a lot of truth in this movie, just sprinkled in there very subtly about just what you can get people to do, and they're kind of using these things. People will do the same thing for money, but they're kind of replacing money in this movie with these things. And I guess their argument, or the argument of the story, or maybe perhaps Stephen King in writing the story, is that maybe sentimental things are maybe more important to people than money, because money can't buy that old jacket that the guy had in high school, because that thing's gone in the trash or whatever. So maybe Stephen King's argument is having things that were really important to someone can be even more conducive to making people do bad things even more than money, which would really be a stretch, because money makes people do a lot of bad things, and unfortunately makes so many of us do, work at jobs and things. So many people, just money makes them do things they hate every single day. Anyway, this review, I'm just trying to say that what I think about this movie is really, really great, and kind of how, I guess Max von Sydow kind of, if I'm understanding correctly, is kind of portrayed as like the physical embodiment of the devil, or if he's not that, he's something very close. He's an evil thing. And what I was getting at about truth is, I would obviously regard money as, being the root of all evil, as it's said, and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, it's just I think there's a lot of subtle truths in this movie is what it boils down to. So this movie is basically about, obviously it's a small kind of town, obviously. Where do you think it's located? Obviously it's a Stephen King story, so it takes place in Maine, this small kind of quiet town, where basically this Leland Garnt comes into the town and opens up this basically little quaint store by the name of Needful Things, which is basically a place where if anyone goes there, they'll end up just magically finding, something that was really important to them from their past, whether it's, being a kid, or maybe not even in the case of the little teenage, the teenage boy who gets a baseball card, maybe not even something from their past, because he's too young to really even have something from his past, but in his case he's got something that he wants, but the thing is from the past, which is like an old 1950s baseball card of some, I don't know, I don't pretend to care anything about baseball, so I don't know, but he wants an old baseball card. So basically the premise of this movie is, basically the devil, personified in frickin', human form as, ironically, the guy who played the priest in The Exorcist, who exorcised, a demon or whatever out of the Reagan in Exorcist, now is playing the devil, which is kind of an interesting twist and could have some hidden meaning all itself. But Max von Sydow, who obviously, starred or appeared in The Exorcist decades prior, is basically being, playing the evil, bad guy Leland Garnt, who owns and operates this magical, darkly, as the movie goes on, it's darkly, turns out to be more and more dark of a darkly magical store, which, like I say, when people walk into, they just, he knows exactly he knows everything about people because he's a bad guy. Maybe the bad guy, who knows, or whatever is supposed to be the bad guy in popular culture or whatever. But so that's the premise of this movie. It also stars whatever his name is, Ed Harris, who's still relatively young after, not too terribly long after having done The Abyss, of course, and Bonnie Bedelia. The only other thing I really even know her from is Die Hard movies, and this movie is, I think, pretty much all I've really seen her in. But that's the premise of this movie, and it's really, I don't know how, having not read the book, I mean, obviously I don't know how close to the book the movie is, but having just, basically just reviewing the movie, I absolutely think the movie is, does this absolutely fantastic thing where basically using these needful things that Leland Garnt just pulls out of, thin air that means so much to these people, he's able to get. This is what I mean about the truth being hidden in this movie. He's able to get these people in this town to basically turn against each other. Where he'll have these rivals, these people that dislike each other. He'll have someone completely unrelated do something to them, and and then someone completely unrelated do something to the other person, which makes it's kind of like, so he'll have these people to in order to, which I didn't even mention yet, in order to acquire this needful thing, all you need to do is a deed, which is in the kid who wants a baseball card's case. He's told to like throw mud on this this farmer woman's all their clean laundry, and throw apples and break the windows and stuff, and the apples happen to be something that this woman's rival, or this woman that doesn't like this woman. Oh Christ! This is just—it's so confusing. It's not even. I'm not even gonna bother freaking trying to vocalize what's it called? The intricacies of the plot of this movie. We'll just say at the end of the day, what happens is Leland Garnt just turns all these people against a lot of people in the town against each other by using these needful things in a way that is. Like I say, the screenplay is really, really, really written and conceived fantastically well. So he just basically turns the town against each other, and if I may, say what I keep saying about this movie having so much truth in it is, in my opinion, I mean, that's exactly what the media and, authorities, quote-unquote authorities, do, is through all kinds of things like religion and race and just social status and all kinds of, sexual orientation and an ever-growing number of things. The ruling class or the establishment, if you will, are able to do this exact same thing with the people of the world to keep us fighting amongst each other. So it is kind of basically just a tale of truth, which is kind of, it's taking the whole world and just reducing it into a town. But what we end up finding towards the end of the movie is anything where bad things happen, basically Leland Garnt has been So he just goes from town to town, and he's been doing this for decades, a lot longer than he could have been alive as a mortal person, which is kind of cool. And at the end of the movie, he talks about, 2050 something or whatever, and Ned Harris's character's grandson and stuff. So in the movie, we're basically led to believe that like all of the, or a lot of the bad stuff that has been happened in the world was the cause, he was the cause of, and all this kind of stuff. So as I said, a lot of subtle truth hidden in the movie, but indeed the people who pull the strings do exactly to to the masses or the populations of the world exactly what Leland Garnt does to the people in this town by, as I said, things like race and sexual orientation and just all these different things, whatever. And it's an ever-growing number of things that can divide people and stuff like that, but they love doing that. So as I said, over and over and over again, it's basically a true story in a way that's hidden in kind of a different guise or whatever, as being like just the man as the devil or whatever. But of course, what's kind of a cool thing about the ending of this movie, obviously Ed Harris, that's his name, right? Yeah, Ed Harris ends up finding out what Leland Garnt, or what's been going on, and that Leland Garnt is the bottom, or is the cause of all this stuff, almost tearing up his relationship with him and his his whatever wife to be or whatever. They just get engaged like at the beginning of this movie, and Leland Garnt almost tears them apart. So he ends up finding all what's going on, and kind of blows it. The movie ends with this Needful Things store blowing up, and of course normally in a movie like this the bad guy is defeated or whatever. I guess the cool twist to this is, you can't defeat the devil or whatever the hell Leland Garnt's supposed to be. So he just kind of walks out of the house after it being completely blown up and just drives away, and basically undefeatable. And obviously the speech that Ed Harris gives to stop all these townspeople at the end of the movie from killing each other and stuff is, which is true. We can't let this guy turn us against each other and get on each other's nerves. And there's a little bit, in closing, I will say there's an interesting little bit of humor in between. There's like, I'm not into religion or don't know much about it, thankfully. So I think if I'm to understand correctly, there's like a Baptist priest, I don't know. There's two different denominations of like, there's a Catholic and maybe I don't know. I'll just say, not knowing all the particulars about these particular religions or whatever, I'll just say that they do a kind of a funny play on even it's a kind of interesting little religion versus religion. They do it, like I say, humorly in this movie, where you kind of have these two, whatever. One's a father and one's a, I don't know. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. One of them's frickin' a Baptist priest and one of them's a pastor. I don't know how the hell all the differences between different religions and crap, but they do some interesting kind of comical play between these two guys. Like even someone of like the same basic religion or whatever are gonna compete or argue and stuff like that. So that was kind of an additional kind of bonus little bit of that you get out of this movie. So I think the movie is absolutely fantastic. I would give it higher stars. I'm gonna only I think I'll just give it three stars out of 4 stars, and it would be a lot higher, except for I do think the movie is a little longer than it needs to be. It's actually 2 hours long, and I do, having just revisited it lately, not having seen it for quite a while, it was very apparent to me, and I think it was that way pretty much every time I'd seen it. It was very apparent to me that the movie, it kind of wears out its welcome for me, and it's so intricate at the beginning, in the middle of the movie, with all these people doing all this stuff to each other and stuff, that it didn't really need to go any further than that for me. And towards the end of the movie, it's just kind of like, yeah. To me, it wears out its welcome. I think that maybe it's 15 minutes too long, perhaps. If you look at the trailer, there's other scenes that are in the trailer that not even in the finished movie, so it was potentially even longer. But I'd say you could easily trim 10 or 15 minutes off of this and make it even shorter. But that's my only problem with the movie. The star rating might be 3.5 stars had it not, what I would, in my opinion, it kind of drags in the last third of the movie, where basically the townspeople go nuts and they're just, everyone's at each other's throats at the end, and you got to have all this kind of action and the exploding church, and then the exploding Needful Things store, and all this kind of epic stuff, if you will. I just felt like was not needed, because the movie didn't have to necessarily go that route for me. It was a kind of a cool movie without spectacle and just all this chaos towards the end. But that's my only real complaint with the movie. The music in the movie is absolutely fantastic, and even as a teenager and still now, I appreciated the use of like the operatic, some of the classical music, and that bit where the opera, that bit of opera was used in the movie as well, when he's just, Leland Garn's just sitting in the chair in front of the fire, just delighting with his, overgrown nails, delighting in the misery he's causing. And that's, like I say, there's a lot of truth in this movie. So thank you very much for watching my review of Needful Things. Feel free to let me know what you think of the movie. I do think it is one of the better kind of Stephen King movies, if you will. Like I say, not being a fan one way or another of Stephen King, but I really took to the movie when it came out, even so much so that I ended up at this, back in the day, getting the soundtrack on CD, which actually does, I think, include the kind of the opera piece that is featured in the movie, as well as the music that was written for the movie, which is, as I said, really, really good. So thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you next time. The young carpenter from Nazareth? Troubling, fuck it.